Okay, we're going to move this to share on Facebook. Let's be sure we get that started before we ask Mr. Waters to convene the meeting. All of our guests that are in the waiting room. It's not letting us do it. Don't know why. Okay. It looks as though we're having problems getting linked back up to Facebook Live, so we might as well begin our meeting. Mr. Waters, as Vice Chair, and in the absence of our Chair, Dr. Emma Lucas Darby, I would ask that you go ahead and convene the meeting.
Okay, without a gavel present to knock on the table here, I am virtually knocking on the table to call this meeting to order. It is May 26th, and this is the Citizens Police Review Board regular monthly meeting. We usually operate with our meeting being at City Council chambers, but we are operating virtually as we participate with the rest of the state of Pennsylvania in social distancing. And I want to thank all my board members for being here with us. And if at some point we end up being live, thank you to everybody watching. I'd like to recognize that we're missing our board chair, Dr. Lucas Darby. We're not quite sure. Maybe she'll be popping in to see us. And other than that, we have everybody here, don't we? Yep. Oh, I'm also missing Karen McClellan. To get started, I don't have any opening remarks. I wasn't thinking I was going to chair a meeting tonight. So I will leave any remarks that I might have to the end of the meeting. Our regular order of business is that we will do board business followed by the case reviews, followed by any period of public comment. And now could I ask Madam Executive Director for your report?
Certainly. Thank you, Mr. Waters. The board may want to dispose of the minutes from the last meeting at this point.
Yes, you're right. Thank you. I should have done that. Has everybody had a chance to read the minutes from the last meeting? And I would accept the motion to accept those minutes.
Make the motion.
Is there a second?
So moved.
It's been properly moved and seconded. All those in favor of accepting the minutes from the last board meeting, please say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? And the motion carries. Thank you. Back to you.
Thank you, Mr. Waters. Our intake thus far into this year is pretty low in comparison to previous years, but we have 106 complaints that have come in. Ms. Gamble has been handling intake and taking all calls on a call forwarding basis from our main number. She has met with a couple of complainants, and we're still practicing reasonable infection control standards in the office. Mr. Investigator Elwood, he constructed a plexiglass shield for us. So when someone comes in, they may still be interviewed. We can take their complaints and it can be done safely. We're still waiting to stock up on some of the, wipes, hand sanitizer, and masks and things that are a little bit in shortage around. Stephanie Dorman has also ordered and is trying to get some chairs that we can wipe off. All the chairs that we have in the office are material and you really can't clean them. So, in the interest of visitors and ourselves, the staff, so we're waiting for them as well. So intake is going on and all the calls are being answered. And Michelle has been a real trooper about maintaining the phone and going into the office to log everything and get the correspondence out that has to go out. After this meeting, the investigators will take your dispositions of the cases. They'll prepare their letters. They'll go in, print them out, and drop them in the mailroom and take care of it. We're not missing a beat. They've been very, very diligent in meeting their responsibilities. And they also have received, I'm not sure that we had this when we met last, but they all have a computer now with access to the city system so that they have access to their case files. And that makes being remote absolutely easy. So they're keeping up with everything. They've been really remarkable. You got a great team of folks in that office. There was a provocative video on Facebook that a member brought to my attention. The issue was related to police training, and someone was driving by, saw something odd, turned around, went back and videoed on their way by. And all we know about it right now is that there was a person in a black hoodie being surrounded and dealt with by what appears to be recruits. It was in daylight. We're not quite sure what it was all about. Mr. Elwood has reached out to the academy to determine if it was a training exercise, what was the point of it, etc. But his word was it was provocative, and it was, especially in light of what happened in Minneapolis, where that gentleman was ultimately, he died subsequent to a police encounter where the officer maintained his knee and pressure on the man's neck. He ultimately died. Those officers, the 4 of them that were involved in that incident in Minneapolis, they've been fired. And the FBI is also investigating. But terribly tragic situation that happened. We had that Mr. Aubrey down south that was killed by a civilian, former police officer. But nonetheless, it's given rise to those very unpleasant but nonetheless real concerns about underlying tones of racism and issues related to law enforcement and dealing with people of color. So the video that was shared on Facebook certainly gives rise to some questions and appeared to be distasteful by those who saw it. The interesting thing is you can look at it 2 ways. I don't know why they were doing it. It was not a great idea to have someone in a black hoodie. I mean, what's the symbol there? What is the message there? We don't know why yet. I mean, if you're going to do that, maybe you do that at nighttime so that you can test somebody's skill at, keeping someone in their vision if they're trying to take control of a situation. But it was terribly unfortunate. And given the environment and the recent incidents, it was a very uneasy feeling. So Mr. Elwood has pursued some clarification from the academy, and we will share that with all of you when we receive and better understand what that was all about. I believe that was it in terms of administrative matters. So I'm back to you, Mr. Waters, to answer any questions that members may have. Excuse me, Mr. Waters, Mr. Ward, and this is for members so that you're all aware of this. It's an update. You'll recall that we were having some difficulty that led to some lengthy negotiations and discussions with the city law department about the OMI answering the subpoenas that were issued. And we believe that we had it resolved, and that they would resume providing us with subject officer statements and the material that we are customarily receiving as a result of issuing a subpoena. We have not received any subject officer statements since the fall, despite what we thought had been resolved, and given that the COVID interruption, and I want to be fair, but we have not. We have received things like the 911 CAD sheet. We're getting some material that's not, it's really not, subpoena worthy, but the subpoenas that have been issued, they have not answered. So I don't know, Mr. Ward, I think at this point, maybe you want to check back with the law department or.
Actually, I did. In anticipation of tonight's meeting, I reached out last Tuesday evening and sent an email to Mike Kennedy with the city law department. I did that on Tuesday, May 19th, and referenced the fact that we had been making great progress as of our last discussion, which was on March 12th. Now, as you acknowledged, the pandemic obviously interrupted much of the procedures, and in fact, I still haven't been to my office since March 18th, even though I've been working electronically. Nonetheless, I had hoped that I would get a response, and I did. I got a response by voicemail this morning from Mike Kennedy. I followed up with him this afternoon and was able to reach him, confirmed receipt of the voicemail, and reminded him that I had a meeting tonight and that this issue may very well come up. I reminded him that as of March 12th, we were both very encouraged about a favorable resolution in the near future. And I wanted to find out if he had any updates, or perhaps more important, if there's no progress, I wanted to ensure that there was no slippage. He agreed. He apologized on behalf of the city. Frankly, I think what's going on is that the law department is spending a great deal of time, at least Mr. Kennedy is, in connection with a federal court case against the city and Deputy Chief Barone, which is in the midst of the final days of factual discovery. That closes on June 15th. So I got the impression that there would be no more extensions granted by the court in the Chatterjee litigation, and that instead everyone was focusing on trying to get the discovery in before June 15th. Now that's not an excuse, so to speak, it's an explanation. I expressly got Mike's authorization for me to tell the board that we remain encouraged that there'll be a favorable resolution of this matter. In my mind, it's been a couple months since our last discussion, but I succeeded, I think, in putting this to the front of his to-do list.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Ward. That helps. Last week, one of our investigators reached out to OMI pursuing an answer to, we have these subpoenas that are out there. Where are we? The manager over there, the person that generally answers us responded that she was unaware as to what the status was in terms of answering those subpoenas, and she was going to pass it on to the OMI director. Now, in fairness to her, she would not have been, maybe not back if she took a long weekend or whatever. We didn't ask today, because yesterday was a holiday. So we were going to go back at the end of the week and say, okay, now where are we? And give them a full list of all outstanding subpoenas for all of our cases that have been sitting over there, because every case that you ordered to a full investigation is subject and would have a corresponding subpoena. So they're piling up, and we want to clear this stuff out too. But
That's, I think, a good idea to circle back with OMI. I didn't get the idea that there was any regression or slippage of their position. It's just that they haven't connected with either Mike's supervisors and or OMI jointly to revisit the position that they've been maintaining for the past 20 years of compliance with the production of documents, and certainly compliance with the subpoena. So this board has shown a tremendous amount of patience and resolve. We're not going away. Hopefully the COVID-19 is going away. And I hope further that our goodwill demonstrated over the past 2 months will be recognized, as opposed to me rushing into court with a petition to enforce a subpoena.
okay. Well, hopefully we'll get it resolved shortly.
Yeah, and I apologize. I didn't finish my conversation with Mike until about 4:30 this afternoon.
Oh, that's no worries. It's just good to have some, that you're really appreciate you staying on it and keeping us up to date. Yeah, because we can be knocking on their door every hour, and it's not going to make a difference until they have that communication from the law department to let it go. So that's wonderful news. We'll see where it goes. And that we also still have an open case in the one that you referenced, Bill Chatterjee.
Yeah, so there are no more extensions by United States District Judge Bassoon. Factual discovery has to be concluded by June 15th. And it had gone through this is all public record, a mediation which was unsuccessful. I do a lot of mediation myself, and sometimes mediation is unsuccessful before all the facts have been discovered, so to speak. Having said that, with discovery now being completed in the middle of next month, the case may be more suitable or ripe for a second shot at mediation.
Good. Would be good to get that case settled for everybody involved. You have any questions for me, members? Thank you, Mr. Waters.
Okay. Do we have any unfinished business?
No.
I do see a comment, but I'm going to leave that to the time at the end of the meeting for public comments. Do we have any new business? Since we don't have any new business, we'll move on to the case review. Give me a second here to get back to that file in the drive. All right. And I apologize, I'm going to cover up your faces so I can see this bigger. And I'll try to keep an eye on the chat window. So if I'm doing anything stupid or I miss something, please let me know in case I have you covered up there. We don't have any cases before us for a public hearing. We do not have any cases before us for a full investigation. We do have 2 cases before us for a 30-day extension of the full investigation. Those are cases 6220 and 0320. Can I have a motion to address these 2 cases?
So moved.
Is there a second? It's been properly moved and seconded that we will have a 30-day extension of full investigation. Is there any discussion on these 2 cases? Hearing none, I'll call for the vote. All those in favor of the 30-day extension, say aye. Aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, nay. And the motion carries. Excuse me. We have 1 case before us to dismiss as out of our jurisdiction. It is case 20818. Is there a motion to dismiss this case as out of jurisdiction?
I'll make the motion.
It's been moved. Is there a second?
So moved.
It's been properly moved and seconded that case 20818 will be dismissed as out of jurisdiction. Is there any discussion of this case?
Mr. Waters?
Hearing none, all those in favor, please
I
say
heard
aye.
somebody say something in the background.
I'm
That was
sorry.
me, and I
Oh,
would
okay.
ask, may I make a comment, Mr. Waters?
Yes, please.
That is a very emotional case that occurred. Just a brutally emotional situation. And the officer who was the focus, the subject of that, he's gone. So we had no option to do anything but dismiss it as out of jurisdiction. But that doesn't relieve the weight of the substance of that complaint. And I'm sorry we can't do more about it, but the officer isn't here anymore. So, you know, with our sympathy and condolences to the family, we just can't do anything about it.
Thank you for that note, Madam Executive Director. I've also been asked to remind Sister Patrice, would you please unmute your microphone so we can hear your vote for or against the passage of these motions? And I have two windows two boxes that both say Sister Patrice on them, so I'm a little confused. But I guess I would like to take a different approach for our voting, if you don't mind. If you click on the participants button at the bottom of your screen, you will see a list of all the participants on the right side of your window. And at the bottom of it is a button that says raise hand. And since this will be, we will make it live at some point, if it's all right with you, I'd like to ask you to vote by raising your hand by pushing that button. Is that a favorable for everyone?
It's good.
Okay.
Yes.
Great. Are you with me, Mr. Williams? Great. And Sister Patrice, I am going to hope that I see that hand go up for you. And if not, we're going to check back with you with the next vote that we have. And I'm sorry, could somebody help me remember? We had a motion. It was properly seconded. We didn't really have much discussion. Did we officially have a vote on the out of jurisdiction?
No, we did not.
No.
Okay, then could I please ask everybody in favor of the motion to move it to out of jurisdiction to please raise your hand by pushing the button. And maybe that's not a good idea because the only hand I see is my hand. Does everybody else see hands?
Yes.
Yes. I didn't. I hit mine. I don't know.
Oh, I'm good. I'm good. I was just looking in the wrong place. Thank you. Now please lower your hands, and anybody who's opposed to that motion, please raise your hand. Thank you. The motion passes. Sorry, I'm not as good at this as I wish I were, but we'll get through.
We're all learning.
Yep. We have one motion before us to dismiss as unsustainable. It is case number 14218. Is there a motion to dismiss this case as unsustainable?
I so move.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
It's been properly moved and seconded to dismiss this case number 14218 as unsustainable. Is there any discussion of this case? Hearing none, I'll ask you now to vote. All those in favor, please raise your hand. Thank you. Will you please lower your hands? And all those opposed, please raise your hands. And the motion passes.
Mr. Waters, Sister Patrice had voted in the affirmative. Her hand is still up.
Yes.
Thank you, sister.
We have two cases before us to dismiss as unfounded. They are 6120 and 25119. Is there a motion to dismiss these two cases as unfounded?
Make the motion.
It's been moved. Is there a second?
So moved.
It's been properly moved and seconded. Is there any discussion of these two cases? Hearing none, would you please vote now to pass this motion by raising your hand? Do I have all the votes on the tally at this time?
Yes.
I have 1, 2, 3, 4 votes in, 5 votes in favor. Please lower your hands, and if there's anybody opposed, please raise your hands now. Sister, your hand is still raised. Is that intentional? In any event, we have a majority in favor of that motion. So the motion passes. I have to apologize in advance. I hear the dogs getting a little rowdy. You may hear some barking. I have 3 cases before us to be suspended. They are case 18819 ED, 0620, and 23019. Is there a motion to suspend these 3 cases?
I so move.
It's been moved. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Is there any discussion on these 3 cases? Before we call for a vote, could I pause for a second to ask, Sister Patrice, your hand is raised. Do you need some assistance from any of us?
Perhaps she stepped away?
Well, out of the fact that we don't understand, we can't use this visual cue. Oh, there we go.
Okay.
And Stephanie has reminded me that we are the only ones that could see the hands raised. What I should be doing that I'm not doing, and I apologize, Stephanie, is stating the number of hands that I see raised if this is going to work. And I apologize for that. So far, in every vote we've had, they've been unanimous decisions. Yes, Mr. Green.
What?
Okay, I'm sorry. I thought it looked like you had become active.
Oh. If I did, I didn't mean to.
Okay, no problem. So this motion to suspend these 3 cases has been properly moved and seconded. There has been no discussion. All those in favor, would you please raise your hand? Do I have all votes showing? Sister Patrice?
Yes.
Is that a yay?
Yes.
Okay, this motion passes unanimously. Thank you. You can lower your hands, everyone. Sorry if I made that more weird than it should have been. We also have before us a list of cases that are continually or at the moment suspended. There are 11 such cases. And I believe, Madam Executive Director, your comment about subpoenas that are still outstanding may speak to why some of these are still in suspension. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Thank you very much. That concludes the case review for this meeting. I get back to my agenda. Which brings me to announcements. Our next regular meeting will be at 6 p.m. on Tuesday, June 23rd. Hopefully we'll be at the Jewish Community Center in the Squirrel Hill neighborhood of Pittsburgh. The address is 5738 Forbes Avenue. However, because we don't know what will be the status for the stay-at-home order at that time, we may be back in another Zoom meeting. But if we are meeting in person at this moment, that's where we believe the meeting will be. Madam Executive Director, do you have any comments about when a decision would be made and how we would let people know about a change to our meeting?
Well, it depends. Council is considering extending the emergency order through, I think it's June 2nd. We're just going week by week. But when we are receiving people by appointment only. We have to, in any correspondence that goes out to someone, that we have a 10-day letter. As soon as they contact us, we have to respond to them. And included in that correspondence package is a notice about, setting up an appointment to come in for an interview if they've traveled outside, of the area, the whole COVID-19 checklist. And we posted that and we continue to do it that way for in-office operations. We're not going to have anybody just coming in regardless. It will have to be by appointment with a designated person in the office. But we're just following the local guidelines. And again, we're okay because the staff, we've been working remotely and we have everything we need for the most part, except the personal camaraderie and the ability to just jump in the car and go interview somebody at their home. We've adapted all of that. There was a question that I'm not sure, Mr. Waters, you want to follow up with that?
Yes. So we have 6 attendees that are watching our meeting. Excuse me, but it doesn't appear as if I can unmute them to speak for themselves. But we had 2 comments from an individual. I'm not sure, is it appropriate to identify that individual?
I think we should probably just refer to the question, the comment.
Okay. The comment says there are a lot of people doing a lot of work during this COVID-19 crisis. It sounds like the runaround. And I believe this person is speaking to the inability of OMI to be following up on the subpoenas. The original case they're ignoring your subpoena for happened in October of 2018. This was followed by a second comment that says, is it generally acceptable to ignore subpoenas with all that's going on right now until we all get back to the office? Is this acceptable in the courts? Seemed like an excuse when I heard it before. What's the next step? What are your thoughts about a timeline for the public hearing you were planning on having originally in January? So there's a lot there, and thank you very much for those comments. Let's start with the first part of that, and perhaps Solicitor Ward, you or Ms. Pittinger would like to comment on whether we should understand the city's actions towards us as being given a runaround or not. Would you say a little bit about that piece of this?
Sure. I think what we're dealing with is some fairly exceptional times with respect to anything that's pertaining in the state and federal courts. The question that's posed is as follows: is it generally acceptable to ignore subpoenas? I'll stop there. The answer is no, of course not. But then it continues with all that's going on right now until we get back to the office. Well, we have a choice where we could, on the one hand, have attempted to file a petition to enforce that subpoena, which would have got caught up in the same inactivity in the courts in view of the fact that the courts were essentially closed down for a good period of time in terms of such public hearings, with the exception of truly emergency situations. The alternative would be to take the less adversarial approach, but nonetheless firm approach, to meet with the law department and OMI, which Ms. Pittinger and I did, followed up with my negotiations, if you will, with the law department to remind them of this, not only the existence of the subpoena, which is going unanswered, but the long procedural history, which has uniformly been in favor of the board for the past 20 years. So we're holding, I believe, a strong hand procedurally, substantively, and precedentially. So the question may be, well, if that's the case, why not just rush into the court and demand that the subpoena be enforced? Well, we could do that. That option is not lost. But whenever you go back in, you run the risk of coming out with something less than what you already have. Now, this is going on in the midst of some pretty extensive, aggressive negotiations with the police union. And part of the theory was that a certain clause that's contained in the collective bargaining agreement somehow absolved the city from having to comply with a subpoena dugistation issued by an independent police review board. The courts have uniformly agreed with us, but frankly, I'm not so sure that's always in the best interest to go back in and risk yet another judge perhaps taking a different approach, or spending weeks and weeks to decide the issue. As it turned out, about the time that we had reached a near agreement with the city law department, the COVID crisis hit, and since mid-March, we've been ordered by federal, state, and local authorities to shelter in place. So to the extent the question asks, what's the next step? I reached out to Mike Kennedy last week. I touched base with him today. I will continue to remind him, and I suspect that sooner rather than later, since the 2 months have already passed, we will have an assurance that we're back on track. If in fact we don't get that insurance, we've lost nothing except some time. We will go into court with the strong arsenal of case law and judicial precedent on our side and seek enforcement of the subpoena. I still think it's faster to do it this way than to go into court.
How would it delay it? Probably another 2 years.
And it also subjects it to an appeal,
Right.
which I think is what Ms. Pittinger was suggesting, in the sense that even if we got a rapid decision from a judge in the Court of Common Pleas, the city could, as it did in the past, say, well, okay, we're not happy with that decision. We're going to go to the Commonwealth Court. And Beth is completely correct that that could be a 2-year process. So why go down that path when we have made great strides, I believe, through negotiations and persuasion to have the city recognize the existing procedural approach that they've taken for the past 20 years and to continue with that unabated.
Do you have anything to add to that, Miss Executive Director?
No, sir. We're very fortunate to have our representation through Mr. Ward.
Agreed, agreed. I guess I would also like to state, it isn't only one subpoena that we're having a problem with. There are a number. And the 11 cases that were already in suspension and the 3 that we added to it, we all take very, very seriously. And I believe we want every single case to be treated to the full extent of the respect and detailed investigation that we can give it, because no complaint is less important. So it isn't only one subpoena that's an issue for us. I do see another part to this question, and that is that yes, we did have a plan to have a public hearing in January. And we as a board will need to revisit a timeline for that, because I don't think that has become unimportant to any of us. I think we're all very concerned and very interested in making sure that happens. We believe it will be important for the city. It's important for our work, and it is not forgotten and won't go by the wayside. We just want to make sure we're taking all the steps necessary to do everything we can to do that as thoroughly as possible. And I've received a comment in the reply that says, thank you for the discussion that we just had. Is there any other attendees who have something they'd like to say via the chat and that I will repeat into the Zoom meeting? And
Waters, if I could, may I?
yes,
One of the dimensions of the necessity to have that subpoena honored and to give us what you are entitled to under the law with your authority to have those documents such as the subject officer statements. What's important about those statements is it gives us the other side. I mean, it's not fair to the officer to just recommend to you and you dispose of a case based on half the story. Sometimes, the statements that we do review do lead us in other directions in the investigation. It may clarify the truth. It may show us that maybe the truth wasn't all that we thought it was. All of those things, but you can't investigate something fairly and objectively without both sides. And in our situation, those officer statements provide us insight to the officer's position. And until we have that, we can't in good conscience give to you a case and say, oh yeah, based on all the facts that we determined or we recommend that you do what A, B, or C. That's not fair. So there's a whole lot to the necessity to have those subject officer statements as an investigative tool.
Thank you for adding that. I see no other comments other than the Ozarks wish us hello. If any, I have no closing remarks other than to say I want to thank. I'm so sorry you're going to be hearing my dogs bark, but I want to thank Ms. Pittinger for mentioning the video that was shot over at the police academy, and I'm glad that we're finding out some information about it. Since I've been on this board, one of the things that I've noticed is that there are many people in the community who, with a lack of thorough knowledge, hold a variety of ideas about what is good policing, what the police should be doing, what the community should be doing. And I think one of the most important things we do as a board is try to bring to light facts, and I really articulate when things are the way they ought to be or are not, and make recommendations if things could be better. So thank you very much for following up on that. I think we help the community believe that the police are there for them when we make sure we articulate facts to them to help them understand what's going on. And if there's something that is not what we think it is, then we can bring that to light and act accordingly. So right now, then I'd like to accept a motion to adjourn.
I just have one thing. Even if the city, the state, or the county say that we could go back, I thought there was still a limitation on the number of people that can meet. Am I incorrect in assuming that?
Yes.
Yes, but we don't know if this area goes to the green phase. We don't know how that will impact gatherings. Right now, it's limited to 25 people.
That's correct. And I thought that's what the green phase also said.
It may. I don't know.
Yeah. I thought it was up to 25 in the yellow and green, but I wasn't sure.
That sounds right, Dr. Gershio. I'm just not certain, but
Okay.
we'll play
Don't
by
forget
ear.
25 anyway. Am I correct?
We never had that many. So 20, I don't think would have any trouble meeting in a group.
I think we should just watch the curve and certainly not subject any of you or us to, or the public, when we're able to accomplish our mission, with relative ease and keeping everybody safe. We just got to keep you safe and well.
That's my concern, that everybody is safe. And if this mode seems to be working, and we still don't have a vaccine, I think, it behooves us to protect everybody. Just my opinion.
So perhaps you would like for us to just indicate probably we will be online for June rather than being out in the community. And if there's a change, then we will acknowledge and post that and let folks know that we're going to be in a physical location. But I think you're right. It's probably very unlikely.
And then if we hear anything from Mr. Ward about, I don't think we'll hear anything from them till after June 15th anyway, right?
It's hard to say. I think what's happening is that there's a sort of almost a desperate rush to complete discovery between now and June 15th. So I know for a fact that they have been taking depositions in that other case and that there are more to be scheduled. The last I heard was June 12th. There might be others both before and after the June 12th deposition. But that doesn't mean, you know, now that I'm back on the radar, that the city can't multitask on that issue.
Right.
Well, it's not the law department that has to do the work.
Correct.
I mean, I don't know what they're waiting for. You know, Mr. Kennedy doesn't have to come down and pull the statements and, you know, correlate compliance to the subpoenas that are sitting there. So all he has to do is make a phone call. Sorry.
I'll keep at them.
It's starting to get to me too.
Oh, sure.
Maybe just as a matter of a note, our meeting is scheduled for the Jewish Community Center, as Mr. Waters noted, for June. Perhaps since you have a quorum, you might want to make a decision about the location of that June meeting now.
I think that's a wonderful idea. Is there a motion to hold the June meeting as a Zoom meeting?
Make the motion.
It's been moved. Is there a second?
Second,
It's been properly moved and seconded. Is there any discussion about holding our June meeting as a Zoom meeting? Hearing none. Let me get back to my panelists. I actually am not. I'm just gonna ask you all to verbally say aye if you're in favor of that motion. Please say aye.
aye.
Aye. Aye.
And all those opposed? The motion passes. Our June meeting will be a Zoom meeting like this. And thank you to all of our staff who are making sure that this can happen. And really appreciate your work so that we can do what we need to do. And I just want to confirm everybody in the Zoom call can see the comments and that we were thanked for the work that we're doing. I also want to thank our attendees who are sitting there kind of listening but not able to actually communicate other than chat. We really appreciate your attendance. You help us know that what we're doing matters to the community. So thank you very much. So we had a motion and a second to adjourn, but we did not have a vote. Is there any other discussion before we vote? All those in favor, please say aye.
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 All those opposed? And the meeting is adjourned. Thank you very much, everyone.
Thank you.
Good night.
Yeah.
Good night.
Okay, thank you.
Stay safe, everyone.
Bye.
Stay safe.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
I'll try to get a new computer.
God bless you, sister. Love you.
I wondered if just her, I was having a conversation with somebody this week and they had used another program and it had interfered with the computer seeing that the camera was there. And
Yeah,
so I'm wondering if that was the issue.
that could be. Okay.
Okay.
You, Thomas. Thank you.
Yeah, I'll try to get better at this too.
You're doing great. Awesome.
Thank you good night.
Good night.